are you, really? It's one of the biggest questions we can ask. In this explainer, we're going to dive into a really radical way to answer it, inspired by Stephen Wolinsky's quantum psychology. But here's the thing. This isn't about becoming a better you. It's about discovering who you are beyond all the labels and stories you tell yourself. So let's get into it. This quote kicks off Wolinsky's book, and it just sets the stage perfectly. Think about it. We're all juggling these three different versions of ourselves, right? There's the you think you are, the you everyone else sees, and then there's what's actually there. Quantum psychology is really a journey to peel back those first two layers and get to the real thing. The book cover itself actually gives us the perfect metaphor. You see that peeling ribbon? That's exactly what this process feels like. It's almost like a form of psychological archaeology, We're digging through all the layers of who we think we are just to find out what's been buried underneath the whole time. Okay, so to even start this journey, we have to face the main roadblock. The theory basically says there's an imposter running the show inside our heads, a kind of psychological squatter that has taken over our identity. And the craziest part is, we've mistaken it for the real us. You know that feeling, right? That sense that you're just stuck on autopilot, or maybe your reactions feel off, like they don't really line up with how you actually feel inside. Well, that little disconnect, that inner conflict, that's our starting point. So this brings us to our first huge idea, the false core. The theory suggests this all starts way back in infancy, with that kind of shocking realization that we're a separate being from our mother. This little trauma leads us to make a really deep, foundational, but get this, completely false conclusion about who we are. And of course, to handle the pain of that false core belief, what do? We build something on top of it. And that's the false self. This is your personality, your habits, all your defense mechanisms. It's literally the entire character you play for the world, and it's all designed to hide or make up for that secret false belief you're carrying around. I love this quote from Nisargadatta Maharaj, who was a big influence on this work. Personality is a mistaken identity. It's such a clever play on words, isn't it? We have mistaken our personality for our real identity. We've literally taken on the wrong identity. Okay, so that's the theory. But how does this actually play out in our everyday lives? Let's take a look at how this imposter self really runs the show with some real-world examples. This table lays it out so clearly. Let's say your secret false core belief is I am inadequate. Well, what's the compensating false self you build? You become a relentless overachiever to prove that belief wrong. Or if the belief is I am worthless, you spend your life trying to prove you have value. Each secret belief drives a public performance. Here's another way to think of it that really helps. The false core is like a pair of glasses you don't even know you're wearing. It just colors everything you see. The false self is everything you do because you're wearing those glasses. But here's the key. The lens isn't reality, and the performance you put on isn't a real solution. And here it is, the central trap. This is the catch-22. When you try to fix the feeling of I'm worthless by chasing achievements and validation, you're actually agreeing with the original premise. You're saying, yep, I am worthless, so I have to work really, really hard to prove otherwise. The very act of compensating just makes the original false belief stronger. It's a perfect, maddening loop. So if trying to fix it doesn't work, what on earth are we supposed to do? Well, this is where quantum psychology takes a hard left turn. The path isn't about adding some new, better belief. It's about dismantling the false one that's already there. The core method here is called neti-neti, which basically means not this, not that. The whole approach is one of radical subtraction. The guiding idea is simple, but kind of mind-bending. If you can think about it, describe it, or feel it, it's part of the constructed self, not the real you. The whole point is to take things apart, not to build something new. So yeah, this is the path of unlearning. And you gotta love this. The book actually quotes Yoda. It's perfect. You must unlearn all that you have learned. It's not about finding a new trick to be happy. It's about uninstalling the faulty software that's been running your whole life. So how does this actually work in practice? First, you just have to acknowledge that this whole false core, false self pattern is a thing. Second, you gotta own it, really see how it shows up in your day-to-day life. But then comes the critical step. You unown it. You realize this whole mechanism, it isn't actually you. And from there, you just watch it without judging it. And that observation itself is what dismantles it.
So, if you actually do this, if you dismantle this whole false structure, what's left? What are you when the story's gone? Well, this brings us to the whole point of the journey, what Wolinsky calls our essence.
Now, essence isn't a better personality or some kind of higher self. No, it's the raw material of consciousness itself. It's what you were before you ever came to that first false conclusion. It's not a thing you can point to. It's more like a pure, open awareness, a kind of spaciousness.
You know what? We can get a little taste of this right now. The book is full of these kinds of questions, so just for a second, let's try it. If you could just set aside all your thoughts, all your memories, all your feelings, who are you in that moment? Do you feel defined? Or do you just feel open, undefined?
Let's try one more. Again, don't use your mind to answer this. Just feel into it, without your thoughts. Do you feel like you have boundaries? Are you limited? Or is there a sense of being unlimited? This question points you directly toward the experience itself. That feeling right there, that open, undefined, unlimited awareness that exists before you have a single thought about it, that's what the book calls the stateless state of I am. And the cool thing is, it's always there. It's just hiding under all the noise of the false self. As we start to wrap this up, this quote from Wolinsky just gets right to the heart of it. The problem isn't your life. It's not your pain or your experiences. The real problem is the conclusion you drew, the meaning that your false core stuck onto those experiences. And this clarifies the true goal. You're not trying to wage a war against your false self. You're not trying to get rid of anything. You're just turning on the lights. When you can see the mechanism clearly for what it is, it stops being you and just becomes a pattern you can watch. And in that simple act of watching, it loses its power. And that right there is the ultimate takeaway. Freedom doesn't come from fixing some broken part of yourself. It comes from that huge, profound aha moment when you realize that the part you've been trying to fix your whole life was never you in the first place. It was just a case of mistaken identity. So we end up flipping the whole idea of self-improvement on its head. The journey is no longer about this desperate struggle to fix a flawed character. Instead, it becomes a curious, open-ended exploration, a journey back to that essential, undefined awareness that you've always been. So the only real question left is, who are you without the story?